Hey guys, just a reminder, my online course is Birth Story Academy, and you can enroll in it at birthstory.com. It's taught by me. You can be in your jammies. It's online. It's pre-recorded, and it has a ton of freebies and downloads. It's everything that you need to prepare for your hospital birth. So hope to see you in Birth Story Academy. How are you doing? I'm really excited for today's episode with Sarah Latane, and we're going to cover this amazing, beautiful birth story. But trigger warning, Sarah and I were we were a disaster pit, or the last 10, 15 minutes of the episode, we're just bawling our faces off. Sarah wrote in because she had a cord prolapse. Now, there's 3 different types of cord prolapses, and she had a type of prolapse that was pretty dangerous. So we're going to cover in this episode some really hard topics, but really some beautiful things, and I think some lessons that are really necessary. So trigger warning right now, we are going to touch on assault and being a survivor of sexual assault, and maybe thinking that you have processed some of your stuff before birth, but then what could happen during birth if you have a history of sexual assault. And you may have listened to Juanita Chase's episodes where I covered this topic as well, and having a trauma-informed birth team. So we talk about that. Then we talk about how that changed the course of her birth preferences. And then we talk about this cord prolapse, and it is an operating room cesarean emergency delivery. So I just want to make sure I disclose it up front. If that does not feel like something you want to listen to, there's 200 episodes. Go find a different one. But if you can handle it, it's a very emotional, I'm saying, we lost our bananas crying, but there's a lot to learn about cord prolapses. There's a lot to learn about trauma-informed birth. There's a lot to learn about spontaneous labor, being GBS positive, having spontaneous rupture of the membranes. This episode's jam-packed, so I hope that you will listen. But if it is not safe for you to listen, do not listen. Okay? Thank you, Sarah, for recording this with me and being a teacher for me to learn as well. All right, let's get to it. What does a contraction feel like? How do I know if I'm in labor? And what does the day of labor look like? Wait, is this normal? Hey, I'm Heidi. My best friends call me Hides. I'm a certified birth doula, host of this podcast, and author of Birth Story, an interactive pregnancy guidebook. I have supported hundreds of women through their labor and deliveries, and I believe every one of them, and you, deserves a microphone and a stage. So here we are. Listen each week to get answers to these tough questions. Birth Story, where we talk about pregnancy, labor, deliveries, where we tell our stories and share our feelings. And of course, chat about our favorite baby products and motherhood. And because I'm passionate about birth outcomes, you will hear from some of the top experts in labor and delivery. Whether you are pregnant, trying desperately to get pregnant, or you just love a good birth story, I hope you will stick around and be part of this birth story family. Hey, Sarah Latane. Welcome to the Birth Story podcast. How are you?
Good. How are you, Heidi?
I'm great. I just told the audience in the intro what we were going to be discussing today. And it's weird to say I'm excited to cover cord prolapse on the podcast, because I'm sure excited was not the feeling that you felt when this all went down. I say excited because it's such empowering education, because there's a lot of fear around cord prolapses, and they're very rare. And so thank you for writing in and wanting to share your story with my audience.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I really appreciate it.
Sarah, let's start with tell everyone and me, because we're just getting to know each other right now, a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do, where you live, all those things.
Okay, I'm 37. I live in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia with my fiance Isaac and our son Teddy. I'm a board certified behavior analyst, but not practicing. I'm right now just staying home with Teddy.
What is a behavior analyst?
I was working in the public school system with sort of the general education population and also special education population, just to try to minimize undesired behaviors and maximize desired behaviors.
I feel like the job that you just described is very much being a voice for the voiceless. And
Mm,
so thank you for what you
mm.
do. Well, let's dig into your pregnancy and your birth story. So tell me a little bit, was this a fertility journey or a spontaneous pregnancy?
Spontaneous pregnancy, we were taken by surprise. We hadn't really decided whether or not we were going to have kids yet. Isaac is 10 years older than I am. We'd just gotten engaged. And I'm pretty sure right before that happened was when the baby was conceived. And I found out about 3 weeks later. I was 3 days late for my period, and it's kind of rare for me. Um, Took a test, and I really thought, I was like, oh no, I'm gonna go on a dog walk. I'll come back and it'll be negative when I try again. Um,
Ha
didn't
ha
realize
ha
it.
ha ha. That's
Yeah.
called
So,
denial. There's
yes.
such thing as a false negative. I don't think there's such thing as a false positive.
No, I did not know that, but know that now. I'm not sure how I felt initially. I think it was just like, how? And then I did tell Isaac pretty much right away later that evening, and he was so shocked. It was a response that I didn't expect. I expected a little glimmer of like happiness,
Yeah.
but I think it was just too much shock. I think if I'm honest, I was excited and wanted to go ahead with everything, but I wanted to make sure we were both on the same page.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, listen, anytime that we have a spontaneous surprise pregnancy, no matter what our life circumstances or what age or what relationship status, it's like whoosh in a minute
yeah,
your whole life is just changed. It's
yeah,
like, okay, especially for a first child.
yes.
So, it's just I mean, it's unbelievable. My spouse and I had a very long fertility journey. Well, I mean, it wasn't very long. For me, it felt very long. It was 10 months. Okay. And because I was 36 and I knew I wanted more than one child and I'd had this fertility journey, we just never used protection. And 5 months later, I found out I was pregnant again. And you said it was the morning and you didn't tell Isaac till that night. That was the same for me. I found out in the morning and I was terrified to tell my husband. I was I was like, "Oh my God, I don't know if this is like it felt really good for me, but I was like, "Oh my God, we have a 5-month-old."
Yeah,
Like,
that's crazy. Oh.
I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to go. So this video is me walking up the stairs and my sister's like video because I had already told her. And my 5-month-old is wearing a t-shirt that says Big Brother.
Oh my God.
Listen, my husband at the time, we walk in and he's like, you can see the shock. He's like, I don't understand. He's trying to process. He's trying to process the shirt and he's not understanding and he's like, and his brain's in denial, you know? It was
Oh.
hilarious. So anyway, I can very much relate to that moment.
Yeah.
A lot of people listening can too. That like, whoa, my whole life just changed and I'm not sure what to do with this information. And sometimes you just need to sit with it all day by yourself or
I
all week.
yeah. Yeah, sometimes I wish I had taken a little bit even longer to kind of feel how I felt about it.
Well, eventually you guys both got on the same page, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yes,
we're having a baby. We're super excited.
yes,
Let's
and I
do
mean,
this.
we are loving this.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, it's so
yeah.
hard, but it is so wonderful. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's talk about this because it's spontaneous. It wasn't planned. Did you have a midwife or an OBGYN? Did you know anything about pregnancy and birth? Like, where did you start?
So we did just go to I can't remember the name, what you even call this kind of thing, but it was like a place where you can go get your pregnancy confirmed and it's free. We
Okay.
did that just to make sure. I made an appointment with the closest OB/GYN that also had midwifery care. And I specified that I wanted to see or go the midwife track, but for whatever reason, I was put with an MD first.
Okay.
And we had an ultrasound there, and it was actually very distressing because the MD was, you're 35 and, advanced maternal age and blah, blah, blah. And then also, he suspected that there was some extranuchal fluid,
Okay.
um, and which I think was Isaac's biggest fear. And
Biggest
um,
fear being a genetic anomaly.
yes, they're just it just something wrong or something happening. I could see that he was just terrified. He referred us to a neonatal specialist, and we did have to wait a few weeks before we could be seen, which was hard, just kind of fretting and not knowing. And everything ended up fine. The neonatal specialist was wonderful. He spent a long time looking at the ultrasound, after the tech had already done one. And he did go ahead and ask us if we wanted to know the sex. And I couldn't deal with any more surprises. So we elected to learn that he was male. He was just an amazing, comforting presence. And I actually asked him if he would deliver our baby, but he had stopped delivering. So I went back to the same practice.
Thank you for sharing about this because when we go looking for things, we find things. And
Hmm.
so often, I mean, it is very common. Most of my doula clients, something comes up, something on the brain, something with the heart, something on the kidney, something on the liver,
Hmm.
some kind of fluid. And then we re-look 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, and these things seem to resolve. And sometimes they don't. Some of you listening are gonna have a genetic anomaly, um, are going to have some fetal anomaly physically, and and don't get good news. Okay, a couple weeks
Hmm.
later, but the majority of everyone that gets sees something, okay, over the course of pregnancy, chances are it's going to resolve or have been nothing at all to begin with.
Hmm.
And if it is something, there's lots of support groups too. So I just
Hmm.
want to give some reassurance that, like, we often find something at some point when we go looking, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it was pretty tense in that waiting
Yeah.
time. Definitely
Yeah.
could have not used that extra stress, but
Yeah. Now, did you have any nausea, cramping, vomiting? Like, how are you feeling? Like physically?
I was ravenous initially and had headaches, and then eventually started getting heartburn first, but the heartburn caused some vomiting, and then I had like incontinence pretty much right away too. So this was embarrassing, but I would have to, if I threw up, I would have to sit on the toilet because it would make me pee. So that started right away, and then eventually I started taking Prilosec for the heartburn because it was pretty phenomenal. But I would
Yeah.
say not that bad. I really liked being pregnant.
Don't be embarrassed by that. It's like very normal for our pelvic floor to weaken. And there's lots of fixes for it. Did you seek pelvic floor therapy at any point in your pregnancy for the incontinence?
Yeah, so I kept seeing the MD, and I didn't particularly want to. They kept scheduling me with this particular MD, and I requested to be referred for pelvic floor. PT, and he just said he just laughed it off and said it was my anatomy and there was nothing I could do. Don't worry about it. And after that, I just decided I wanted to transfer care.
Okay. Good for
And
you. It is
yeah.
never normal. It's never normal. While it's common
Hmm.
to have what we call stress incontinence, peeing or leakage when we vomit, when we cough, when we have any stress, going for a jog, run, doing sit-ups, ab work, anything like that. That's called stress incontinence. It is common. It is
Hmm.
not normal. And so seeing pelvic floor therapy or a urologist is definitely recommended in pregnancy, even if your provider writes you off.
Hmm. And I did get to see a midwife there. It was my very last appointment before I switched over, and she referred me right away, of course. So,
Of course.
yeah. And it was very helpful.
Yeah, Sarah, good for you. The thing I
Mhm.
preach all the time on my Instagram and on my podcast is like, look around,
Yeah.
pay attention. If you don't have the right team, then I can't guarantee what type of experience you're going to have. But
Yeah.
like, we don't want to look back and be like, oh, I was in control of choosing my provider the whole time. I knew I was getting treated like trash and I didn't do anything about it.
Hmm.
Like, so bravo. Like,
Thank you.
you recognize, like, hey, I'm not in the right place. This is not the way I want to be feeling. And you switch. Yes. Yes. That is like queen status, Sarah. So you switched over to this other practice.
I did. And I think it was about 25 weeks when I established care with the other practice, and immediately started seeing all the midwives.
Yeah. And was there intention to deliver at a hospital?
Yes, so before, when I was thinking of switching, we did look at, I thought about a home birth, but Isaac was not comfortable with that. We toured a birth center, and it was like within minutes from the hospital. You could see the hospital, but something about it didn't feel right.
Okay.
I can't put my finger on it. But we decided
Intuition.
not. Yeah, yeah. So we decided not to do that. And then the place where I transferred, their policy is to deliver in the hospital. And also, they had birthing tubs at this hospital, and I really wanted to labor in water.
Yeah.
So that was another deciding factor.
Okay. So now I'm going to ask you, now we're in pelvic floor therapy. You're being proactive with Prilosec, which is a proton pump inhibitor. It's different. People typically start like with over the counter heartburn medicine, which are H2 blockers like Pepcid. Prilosec is a proton pump inhibitor, so is like Nexium. Those, I think there's a lot of brands out there, but those are more powerful. So start with Pepcid. If that doesn't work for you guys, talk to your provider about going on a PPI, which is what Prilosec is. There's even stronger ones, like Nexium is even stronger than Prilosec. So you can go up from there. But you are doing all the right things. You're being so proactive. You get to the right midwife. Now, how are you preparing for birth?
Um, let's see. We eventually do a childbirth class through the practice. I listened to podcasts. I listened to your podcast a lot. I read Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth. I watched maybe a few birth vlogs on YouTube, but I honestly had trouble handling them. They made me cry like uncontrollably. So I only watched a few.
In fear, in joy, and like what do you think was behind those tears?
I think joy, but a little bit of fear.
Yeah. So many hormones. Were you planning, like, I really want to have a medicated birth and get my epidural as quickly as possible, or I want to see what my body can do, or I want to have an unmedicated birth? Did you have a plan in mind?
I think initially we talked about like considering an epidural. Um, I think my knee jerk was all natural. And then Isaac was like, you don't have to suffer needlessly. An epidural is okay. It's there. It's a tool. there for a reason. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe. And then when I really started to write out my birth plan, I decided I just really wanted to see what my body could do, go as low intervention as possible. I was also taking these online class through Arrow Pump or
The breastfeeding company?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I took several of those, and they were very
I think
much
it's Aeroflow.
Aeroflow. Thank you. I can't my
Yeah, it's
brain.
okay.
They were very much recommending low intervention as possible to help with eventual breastfeeding. So I really wanted to breastfeed, and I didn't want anything to mess with that. So that kind of like solidified that
Yeah.
desire to go as natural as possible.
Yeah. It is as a birth doula, I like walk this fine line, right? Because every single person has a different plan, and there's no
Mm-hmm.
right plan and there's no wrong plan. Every plan is different. And then you can have the best plan and the best preferences and then a twist. We never
Mm-hmm.
know what that twist could be. So I think flexibility is really important. Have preferences, vision, manifest, put it in this world, take the classes, and then we'll be
Mm-hmm.
flexible. I have no idea what your birth plan, your birth story looks like after that birth plan. So the next question I'm going to ask you is, what gestation were you when you went into spontaneous labor, and how did you know you were in labor?
Um, I was 40 weeks. It was his due date.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Less than 5% go into labor on their, like we call it a guest date, but on their due date or their guest date.
um, and I knew that was going to happen. Like when they told me the due date, I knew he was going to be a due date baby. I just had a feeling. Turns out he was one day after, but um,
That's normal. Labor's 24 hours on average.
yeah. Um, and but I guess I should go back a little bit. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, like at the very end,
Oh,
and
what was your
um,
symptom?
I was having a lot of trouble sleeping. I was having restless legs, and I kept complaining about that, and wasn't getting any help with that. And then heart palpitations that were. I mean, there's no way I could have slept through them. It was crazy.
Okay.
So finally, the midwife ordered my TSH levels to be checked, and then an iron pill. And I did have
An
hypothyroid.
EKG?
No,
You
oh
didn't?
no,
Okay.
no.
Oh, I could
But
sweat this out right now. When you say heart palpitations, y'all get an EKG just to be sure.
she mentioned it, but we went ahead and just did the other things first
Okay.
for my request. I didn't want to do anything too drastic, and it turned out I did have a mild, I guess, I can't remember the term, hypothyroidism. So I
Yeah.
started taking levothyroxine
Mm-hmm.
and
Synthroid is the brand name.
and an iron pill, and it fixed everything.
Okay.
Um,
Were you anemic then also?
ever so slightly.
Okay.
And she did say that the practice policy was to induce at 41 and 1 with
Mm-hmm.
something like hypothyroidism, which that scared the crap out of me. So um, I I had already been doing stuff like dates, red raspberry tea, and then in I think I was ingesting and inserting evening primrose oil. But then on his due date, and I did worry that this had taken it too far, but and maybe you can speak to this. But the midwife who delivered said that this could not have caused what eventually ended up happening. I did use clary sage oil.
Yeah,
Um,
no.
okay, thank you. So I believe I put some on my stomach the after like early afternoon on his due date. And then later that evening, I think I put some in a bath.
Clary
But
sage is one of the safest essential oils. I mean, it's beautiful it's just a very feminine oil, and
Hmm.
it's very beautiful for labor, for soothing when you're in your cycle. It's really great for full moons. It's really great for menopause. 100% of my clients have had clear doused in clary sage, like
Okay.
their whole pregnancies and their labor and delivers. And I think one of the things I mentioned in the intro, Sarah, was that we were covering cord prolapse, which we're getting to. And I've attended 1,500 births to date and never witnessed cord prolapse of any kind. And there is no evidence or data to suggest that clary sage
Okay.
has anything to do. Wash that guilt away. Neither do dates, neither does red raspberry leaf tea. Those other things can help ripen the cervix, okay? Umbilical cords are long often. They're
Hmm.
squishy. The babies are playing with them, right? Like your amniotic fluid is pulling in front of the head. Um, because you guys, we're getting to Sarah's story where we're going to talk about cephalic vertex presentation prolapse, which is like also very rare. More likely with transverse, a sideways position. Of course, the cord could fall down because there's nothing
Hmm.
blocking the cervical opening. Typically, the head or the butt, if your breech presentation, is going to be blocking that cervical opening. So no, Sarah, you did nothing. Okay.
Thank you.
You could be like, I did handstands every day because I'm a yogi where you're upside down, you know what I mean? And then it's still, you're like, you are not responsible for that. It's just, it is what happened. You didn't definitely Clary Sage did not do
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I did feel some guilt. So thank you for absolving me of that.
Yes.
Um, um,
I hope you hear me laughing. I'm like, it's so not probable it's laughable. I'm like,
okay,
no,
good.
it's like, no way. So, sorry. I wanted to make sure I made you feel better there, but
Thank you.
continue on for us.
Okay, so on his due date, there were actually no signs in that morning. I had been having Braxton Hicks, I think, for maybe a week or two. Mostly anytime I got up or sat down, anytime I changed positions.
How would you
Uh,
describe a Braxton Hicks? How did it feel?
it just felt like my entire stomach got tense, um, and then it lessened. So it was just sort of
Pain associated with that or just
no, I
tightness?
no pain, just tension.
Yeah. So the main difference between Braxton Hicks and prodromal labor is Braxton Hicks tends to be like this tightening where the uterus
Hmm.
is like warming up. Prodromal labor is where it feels like actual contractions with tightening and pain, but then it kind of fizzles out after 3 or 4 hours. So you were just having the Braxton Hicks, the warm up contractions where the uterus practices tightening to get stronger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that had been happening, and then no sign of anything the morning of his due date, and then we decided to go to Costco to stock up on food, knowing he was probably coming soon. And we were in the car on the way there, and I think it was about 2:45 when I first noticed feeling a contraction that was not a Braxton Hicks. I don't know if I had maybe just not noticed earlier, um, but it was totally different. It was lower down, more like a period cramp,
Mhm.
and then it was kind of like a surge and intense, but not painful yet, and then it would stop.
Yeah.
Um, so we got to Costco and we were walking around, and I was having them about every 13 minutes. I started just like loosely looking at the time, and we actually bumped into my fiance's dad at the Costco, and he just laughed like, your baby's due today. What are you doing? And then he was like, but nobody has their baby on their due date, so you're okay. And I didn't say I was having contractions,
But
but
they
they were
were
happening.
coming. And
Yeah.
actually, walking helps progress labor. And so, just being upright and walking around Costco can help things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I felt really good. I was, I don't know, I was just happy.
Yeah. And
So
excited. Yeah. I have a lot of clients that are get to that phase and then they're like, please don't stop. Like they're like, oh, I think we're here. And then they just don't want it to stop. So tell me about the rest of the afternoon and evening. Did it can just keep getting
yeah.
stronger?
Yes. We went to my fiance's house. We have two different houses. We're living at mine, and but we went over to his house to check on and water some plants. And so I remember sitting in the sun and like pulling up my shirt so the baby could get some sunshine. And I remember going upstairs and taking, the last picture of myself pregnant. Um, and then we got in the car. I think I started timing them around like 5 in the evening. And later I think I was like, finally getting around to like, putting like peaches and pears or something away from our trip to the store. And I felt a gush of liquid. And I realized that it was my I think my mucus plug and a bloody show is what was happening, is what it looked like.
But not your water?
No, because it stopped. I did what they had said in the childbirth class and put a liner in, and nothing happened after that for a while. Um,
So this is so important, Sarah. So it was a gush of vaginal fluid, which pulls around the cervix. And then as the cervix softens, meaning it thins from 4 centimeters and it starts thinning to paper thin, it starts to open and that mucus that's in there starts to release. And the capillaries on the cervix are vascular. And when they thin and open, they bleed. And that's what creates bloody show. If it was your amniotic fluid, it will keep leaking out of you and gushing out of you. It'll leak down to your knee, your ankle, your feet. Sometimes it's very obvious, like a waterfall, and sometimes it's just a very trickle down your legs. So it sounds like you just had a gush of your vaginal fluid and bloody show, which is a really good sign of labor progression.
yeah, I remember we came out to the sun porch where I am now, and we sat down, and it's dark, and he was like, "This is happening," and I was like, "I think so," but I also knew it could still take potentially a day or two. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
and he told me, "I love you so much," um, and then I remember thinking, I wonder if we'll get to sleep here tonight. Um, So we ate some dinner, watched a show. It did things sort of slowed down while that was happening, and I think I was distracted, um, and then I want to say the contractions kind of picked back up again. So I remember the childbirth educator saying, or even and the midwives, do something, go take a bath or something, and if they go away, it's just, I guess, the prodromal labor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I did, or it was actually really funny. Isaac, I said I wanted to take a bath, and he goes and he gets these like scrub brushes that he puts on the end of drills when he's not a big cleaner, but like every now and then he'll like really clean. So he like the tub was just glistening, and like
Oh.
so it was perfectly clean. Lit some candles, and was in there and had some, just some time with the baby. And was timing the contractions. They came back, and the app that I was using did say it was time to go to the hospital.
Oh, you
Well,
guys, those
well,
apps friggin' kill me. Oh my God.
but I
Ah,
I didn't trust it.
the FDA requires that once you hit around 5 minutes apart for 60 seconds, that it tells you that. It doesn't know anything about you. It doesn't know if your water's broken. It doesn't know if you're GBS positive. It doesn't know anything. So do not go to the hospital based on a contraction app. Go to the hospital based on the advice of the people around you that are supporting you and know your medical history and your personal wishes for your birth and your preferences.
Yeah, I didn't listen to it,
Yeah.
and I did not want to go to the
Delete.
hospital until I absolutely had to.
But that tells me you
Um,
were around 5 minutes apart.
I think, yeah, I think I can't remember. I took a picture of it, and I should have looked at it. Um, but they weren't. I don't know. I don't remember them being like incredibly painful, um, especially while I was in the bath. Um, but then I got out of the bath, got ready to go to bed, and I did put a puppy pad down on the bed just in case. And sure enough, I think it was around 11:40. It was my water for sure that broke. Um,
Yep. Isn't it funny? We're such mammals. We're like, okay, I'll go to bed now. Ha ha ha. No, you'll go into labor now, is what your body
yeah.
said.
So right around midnight, I called the call service for the midwives, and I got the midwife on call, which was it happened to be the only midwife I had not met in the practice.
Of
I was due
course.
to Yes, I was due to meet her the following Tuesday, and this was Saturday, or at midnight, so Sunday. Um, and she said, I told her I was GBS positive, but she said, it's probably a high leak. It's your first child. It's going to be a long labor. Continue to labor at home. Um,
I love her.
and
I
that was great. That is exactly what I wanted to hear. I'm afraid of hospitals, so I did not want to be there if I didn't have to be there.
You're amazing, and this midwife's amazing. Sarah, just this morning on my labor line, I get a text message from a client that says, ugh, GBS positive. So I guess I have to go to the hospital as soon as my water breaks. And I'm like, who gave you that information? Listen, I'm not going to go into medical advice right now because I'm not a doctor. But number one, you can decline antibiotics. Number two, you can wait to go to the hospital if that is what you and your medical provider have decided. Three, if you call a nurse triage line and you get like a person at a call center in Texas, they are legally obligated to tell you to go to triage. So don't go that route. Make sure you get a hold of your medical provider, maybe by sending a portal message, or Sarah, you had direct access.
Mm-hmm.
But listen, do your research, y'all. Get on evidence-based birth, read some articles on GBS. Chill out if your water
Mm-hmm.
breaks. Okay? You're going to be in labor a long time if it's your first birth. So if we want to avoid an induction of labor, maybe that's your goal, is to go have an induction of labor. But in Sarah's case, just stay home. Was it easy for you to stay home? Is that what you were aligned with? Did you want to stay also?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. If I'm honest, I wanted to have the baby by myself at home. And weirdly, I had like recurring dreams of just like having him. He would just like would fall out of me, and I felt nothing. And then I couldn't find him. Not sure what any of that meant, but I was like, in my heart of heart, I wanted to have him by myself at my house.
Very normal feeling.
But then I woke up. I was able to sleep in between the contractions. I would wake up with them, but then I think I was very tired, so I could sleep in between them for the most part. Around 2, though, I got up, and I had a fresh puppy pad and everything, and I checked it, and I remember turning on the light on my phone, and I was like, "Ooh, that's green." So I knew it was meconium, and um, I remember my aunt saying something about her daughter ingesting meconium, and it being a bad sign. So I was like, I think we need to go to the
Yeah.
hospital.
Let me tell the audience a little bit about meconium. It comes in all different colors. So sometimes they poop a little bit, and it's light meconium, like a light yellow. Then there's more of like what we would call could potentially be more of like a distress poop, which is a lot of poop, which is a darker, thicker, tarier green. What color was yours?
It was not yellow. It was green for sure. There were some thicker parts, but it wasn't tarry.
Okay, not tarry. So that's good. The birth center here wears t-shirts that say meconium happens.
Mm-hmm.
Meconium is very normal at full term and after, but it also could be a sign of fetal distress.
The midwife did say it was, just like you're saying, it was not always a bad sign. But I think it was good for us to have gone into the hospital when we did. It did take us
Absolutely.
forever to get out of the house.
Why? What was Isaac doing?
we had we had 4 dogs,
Okay.
and they needed to go. 2 needed to stay. 2 needed to go to his parents, and um, I don't even know. It just seemed to take forever. Um, and we had about a 30-minute drive to the hospital. So we're in the car. That was tough having contractions in the car. um, we dropped the dogs at 2 of the dogs at his parents' house, and oh, and I should say the weather had turned. So this was August 14th, and all of a sudden it was cold, and there was like
Hurricane
a wind
season.
brewing.
Yeah. I'm like, last August, hurricane season had just started.
Yeah, the weather was totally different in the night, and I remember having to wear like long leggings and a cover up on top, a t-shirt and then a cover up. And we got to the hospital. We went into the ER the way the childbirth educator told us to go, and they were like, nope, wrong spot. Get back in the car, drive around to the other entrance, and it was like a ghost town. It was very weird. All their systems were down for maintenance, because it was early Sunday morning,
Yeah.
and we were admitted. It was a little after 4, after the nurse checked the fluid and realized it was amniotic fluid. Um, and so got into a labor and delivery room, and then I was, yeah, I don't, it was,
When
I
did
just
your
couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it was happening, but when did your midwife come to see you?
I think it was about 4:30
Okay.
in the morning.
And is that when she performed a vaginal exam?
Yes. So let's see. I remember I changed into a gown, tried to get comfortable. Isaac tried to get comfortable. Midwife came in. It was the midwife I had not met yet. Um, and, said, I'm going to give you a cervical exam. And I, I had no idea how I was going to respond to it, but I did not tolerate it. And um, basically was like climbing the back of the bed and just extremely tense. I realized I had started to, I guess, disassociate, and cry uncontrollably, which it was just so strange and so unexpected. And I think at some point I realized, like, oh my God, I'm having a trauma response. And sure enough, after she had performed the exam, she quietly asked me if I had a history of sexual abuse. And I said that, yes, I had some sexual trauma in the past. And I think I really, really wish that I had a vaginal exam before I was in labor, just so I could have gotten that out of the way, because I think it put me in a different headspace. I was just so, so tense and so uncomfortable after it, and I'm almost not there. Everything I had wanted to stay grounded, and be present, and I just was sort of out of control. So that was very, very hard for
Yeah.
me.
May I ask, how do I put this? Because I sort of know the answer, but like, if you could go back in time, would you have created a trauma-informed birth team by allowing your midwife to have known that in advance about your history?
Yeah, I guess I wish I didn't know that that existed. I do wish that it was commonplace to ask, like, have you ever experienced um, any
Yeah.
kind of sexual violence, because it's invasive, and I guess it makes sense that it's so triggering. I did not anticipate it.
Yeah. It is on my intake form.
Mm,
And I ask my clients to take their forms alone, first of all, because not
mm-hmm.
all partners are aware of some of the
Yeah.
things. But I need to be aware as your doula, your midwife or OB, if you trust them, could be aware. Um, Having conversations like this gives an opportunity to let people know um, what they could do in advance of labor. Um, Often sexual assault and trauma comes forward if it's unresolved, right? Because our every cell of our body has memory.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if it was a long time ago, you guys, and you've done counseling, therapy, whatever it is, I do highly recommend that everyone have some extra counseling sessions. I don't think it's necessary, Sarah, to have a vaginal exam in advance.
Okay.
I think everyone's different. Like, I don't think you have to repeat a behavior that's unsafe, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order, I would even say you could avoid vaginal exams altogether as a
Yeah, that would have
survivor.
been
As a survivor,
ideal.
um, because when we get into your prolapse, there are ways to identify prolapse without a vaginal exam, right? Fetal heart tones
Mm-hmm.
specifically. And have medically necessary vaginal exams. But creating a trauma informed birth team can help you feel safe. And having, if there is a medically necessary vaginal exam at any point, having a strategy for that. Am I closing my eyes? Am I making eye contact with someone? Do I have a sensory item? Is there a smell? How is the provider walking me through? Okay, you're going to feel the back of my hand. Do I have your permission? You're going to feel cold gel. Do I have your permission? I'm going to open your labias. Do I have your permission? And just kind of going very slow in the language. It should be like that for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's one opportunity to have that. So I'm
And
really
I will say, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, I was just gonna say I'm sorry. I was just like,
Oh,
that I'm really sorry for what happened to you. And then I'm sorry that it came forward in your birth, which should be a magical time. But for survivors of sexual assault, so much is taken away.
mm-hmm.
And then you're like, and then you're going to take this away from me too.
Yeah. And I thought it was resolved. I really thought I had done a lot of the work, but no, I have so much more to do. So, and I just feel like it's so common. So, like you said, it it should be dealt with more delicately, for everyone.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so that was awful. And they started to talk to me about an epidural because I was so incredibly tense after that. And
But I have a
they were,
question. But at that point, they did not feel the cord, they only felt the
no,
head.
no. And I'm sorry. She had said I was 1 centimeter
Okay.
and 100% effaced.
Okay. So at that
It,
point, the cervix wasn't really even open the width of an umbilical cord. Okay. So
No,
since I know that one of the key topics of this episode is prolapse, I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss that part of the story.
no,
So,
it's coming.
um,
Um, and I just reviewed my notes this morning, and he was at a -3 station
-3.
at
So
that
very high, not engaged. Okay.
time.
-3 means there's a lot of space and compared to the ischial spine. So there's a lot of space for amniotic fluid, a cord, different things. As an example, if you have a cephalic vertex baby in your -3 station, they wouldn't artificially rupture your water because it could cause a cord prolapse because the head is still too high
Okay.
to cover the cervical OS. Okay.
Okay. Um, well, that's something I had actually wanted to ask you about. So I'm kind of jumping out of order,
It's all
if
right. We
it's
can go in
okay.
all the orders, whatever you
Okay.
need, Sarah.
Um, it in my paperwork it says it was cord prolapse due to PROM, so premature rupture of the membranes. But I was having like contractions, and the water ruptured with a contraction. So is that premature
No,
rupture of the?
no.
Okay, I didn't
So
think so.
So prom, the definition of prom is that's your first sign of labor.
Okay.
Okay. You had what we call SROM, spontaneous rupture of membranes during labor contraction. So that's mischarted. So
Okay.
now they may have called you prom because you were 1 centimeter
Hmm.
dilated and you weren't in active labor. But you were
Okay.
in labor, you were having contractions, you had been having contractions at that point for nearly 12 hours
Hmm.
before your water ruptured. So that's really technically SROM, spontaneous rupture of membranes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Um, so I guess back to the labor. After the exam, they were the nurse and the midwife were suggesting an epidural because he was starting to his heart rate was decelerating a little bit with contractions, and they said, you're very tense, you're not breathing through them. They coached me on breathing through them. I mean, I everything I had learned, I think, went out the window after that. I think that could have happened anyway, but I think it really put me into a very odd headspace after that exam. And
Well, you said you dissociated, which means your
mhm,
body and your brain separated.
mhm.
They weren't
Yeah,
working
totally.
together. They weren't working synergistically and in unison together. I think it's very normal that then that your body was having a trauma response and your brain was trying to labor.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I initially declined. I really didn't want to do it. I wanted to try to get back on track. The coaching with the breathing did help a little bit, um, and then I don't remember at what point this was, but the nurse came back in. Isaac actually knew her. Had been on a date with her a long, long time ago, so it's kind of funny.
Super awkward.
Yeah, and um, she said something to me. I don't really remember what it was, but I didn't want to hurt the baby, um, and so I was said, okay, let's try this. Let's get the epidural. Um, it For me it was painless, and I was immediately able to relax and sleep. They kept the heart rate monitor on for me. They asked if I wanted to hear it, and I said yes. I found it really, really soothing. Um, I slept, and then I
Did you
remember.
feel embodied after the epidural? Like you dissociated, but when
Hmm.
the epidural came in and relaxed your body, do you feel like you were able to re-embody, reintegrate?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think so. I don't know how present I was. I do think. I was so overwhelmed, um, and tired. I'm not sure I was as present as I wanted to be, but I did feel safer, um, which I think was
Good.
good.
Good. And
Yeah.
that's what people need to hear, right? Like
Mm.
birth preferences are flexible, and
Mhm.
epidurals are sometimes tools to keep us emotionally safe, sometimes physically safe, sometimes just to elevate and have a better experience. So
Yeah.
no one should ever, this podcast especially, we, there's like unmedicated birth versus medicated birth. Like it's birth. You
Mhm.
do whatever you need to make your body with full body autonomy feel safe.
Yeah, I think it was a good call. I'm grateful that whatever she said hit.
She's a very intuitive midwife that her reaction tipped her off. Your reaction tipped her off to understanding your history.
Yeah, we thought so too. Um, I was not able to labor in water though. They wouldn't let me do that. They wanted to keep the monitor on him the whole time, which was disappointing to me. But also, I'd had the epidural, so I couldn't. Um,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Um,
you had a lot of things going on though. GBS,
mhm.
ruptured, meconium, and then and the arguably the need for continuous I'm listen, I got to be careful with my words here because every birth is different. In this case, the need for continuous fetal monitoring um because there was already an irregularity in
Mhm.
fetal heart tones. And then, of course, yes, you cannot get in the water. Just in case anybody doesn't know that, you can't get out of the bed and get into the bathtub with an
In
epidural.
epidural. um, so I fell asleep and then I did wake to the machine going quiet. And I I I didn't know to be alarmed at that point. Two nurses came in, they rotated me to my on my left side. And it looks like I didn't know this, but I think my blood pressure was low, and they may have given me is it epinephrine?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay,
Yep. And
I
that's
did not know
very
that.
normal. Very
Okay,
normal with an epidural. So
okay,
they give you fluids, lots of IV fluids to vasodilate because there's a vasodilation, vasoconstriction thing that happens with the epidural and it drops
okay,
your blood pressure. And so it's very normal for people's blood pressure to drop. You are only given epinephrine if it drops too low, like let's say if you were 80 over 40.
okay,
Okay. Okay. Or if you could be 90 over 60, but if you're symptomatic, vomiting, lighthead, dizziness. So sometimes they treat just on the pressure and sometimes they treat on symptoms and sometimes they treat on both.
okay. Um, and after that, he seemed to stabilize. I fell back to sleep, and then
With rotating positions is what made him
mhm,
stabilize. Okay.
mhm. Um, Isaac was sound asleep, and then I woke again to the monitor going completely quiet, or I think it was completely quiet, and then I knew to be scared, and it seemed like a long time. Nobody came, nobody came, nobody came, and then all of a sudden the room exploded with people. I'm not sure how many people were in there, but they were like pulling cords behind me, and the midwife came in. Um, she started to do an exam. I felt nothing,
Okay.
which was nice,
Okay.
and I knew something must be wrong. I believe Isaac got up. He was very disoriented, and I remember the midwife saying, "Your baby's cord has prolapsed. We need to go to the OR to have this baby now." And I mean, I've never felt fear like that. It just, I knew something was wrong, but I did not know something was that wrong.
Had you ever heard of a cord prolapse before?
No, I had no idea what it was.
Okay. So let me just, for you guys listening, It's very rare. You heard me say I've never, in my 1,500 births, I haven't seen it. I haven't been witness to it. There are three types of cord prolapses, and they can lead to fetal death. So cord prolapse, the three types are overt. Yeah, and I don't know how to pronounce this word because I'm not a medical person. Phunic presentation, and occult prolapse. So I just want to define it because I think that you had an overt cord prolapse, which is when the cord comes through the cervix into the vaginal canal after waters are ruptured. And that's what your midwife was feeling in that exam. And that kind of cord compression is what led to the fetal heart tones going down
Mm-hmm.
or completely going away. Somebody write in or send me a DM on how to pronounce this word. Phunic presentation is when there's like a loop of the umbilical cord, and it just like imagine like a U shape, like a little loop, and it lies between the fetal presenting part and the still intact membranes covering the OS. So that means like your water has not broken, and when they do like a vaginal exam or whatever, the cord would be in front of the head. So instead of feeling a head on a vaginal exam in a bag of water, they're feeling that little loop, okay? And then occult cord prolapse is when the cord is located alongside the presenting part. Okay, so let's say the cord is like next to the head, but it's not detectable by like the midwife. She wouldn't have been able to feel that. She would have just felt the head. So the fact that you were ruptured and she felt the cord tells me it was an overt cord prolapse. Does that feel aligned, Sarah?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And
Um,
so they race you to the OR? Like, what happens?
I have hyperventilated. I've never done that before, but I could not breathe.
Okay.
Um, and I think I was crying. Isaac was, like not really understanding what was going on, trying to console me. I barely could see anything. And somebody gave me an oxygen mask, and yeah, they rushed me. And I remember thinking, like, Isaac was left in the room. I mean, we just left him, and they were flying down the hallway. And I was like, how on earth is she going so fast backwards, the midwife? Because I could see her at the foot of the bed, and I thought she was running backwards with the bed. But she was, and I did not know this. She was on the bed with her hand inside me, holding his head up and out of the way.
Yep.
Um,
She's an amazing midwife.
Yes. Yes. It's incredible because it took us, we flew down the hall, got into the OR. From the notes, it took us 9 minutes to get me prepped. I think they had to turn up the epidural. Um, first of all, they couldn't find the anesthesiologist. They found somebody different. He was an anesthesiologist, but he wasn't the person who set my epidural. Um, I was so scared. He was wonderful. And uh, um,
Sarah,
it was just so panicky.
you are currently having a trauma response. I'm watching you.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying not to cry.
No, cry.
Um,
It's okay. I was like, girl, you can make me cry. I'm just like watching you on this Zoom call. And so like, as we finish telling the story, you tell what feels safe because you're having a major trauma response. And so like now I'm crying. I don't want you to I don't want to push you into something that doesn't feel safe. So you can
Thank you.
tell me what you need to tell me, or you can say, and then I had a C-section. Okay.
Yeah, no, thank
Um,
you.
and I also am going to send you the information for someone that processes birth trauma and works virtually because I think
Oh,
you need to talk about it some more.
yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, they it was so chaotic in there. And it was, 4:40 something in the morning. Or sorry, no, not at all. It was like 8:40 something in the morning. And they were, like rushing around. And I remember someone saying, there's no betadine or, that stuff they put on you. And I remember the midwife saying, it doesn't matter, this baby needs to come out now. And she was yelling it. And the doctor introduced himself. He was very calm, which made me feel a little bit better. And, they got me onto the weird table where your arms are out. Someone tried to put a hairnet on me and it didn't work. They just gave up.
Right.
And I remember I was like, am I going to feel this? I'd never had any kind of, I'd never had surgery where I had to go under anesthesia or anything. And he said, no, I'm going to make sure, you don't. And we're going to test it first. So I guess they turned up the epidural and they did a test cut, and I felt pressure, but I didn't feel any pain.
And
Luckily.
Isaac
And
never came. They never were able to bring
no,
him
they
in.
couldn't. And he, poor thing, he was in there. I mean, he said it was like chaos in there. And then all of a sudden the room was empty and he was all alone and did not know what was happening. And he made 2 phone calls. Maybe 3. I think he called my sister, my mom, and his parents, and he said, I don't know what's happening. You guys need to get here. And
Isaac needs to go to therapy too.
Yeah. We had a very hard time together in the beginning. After this, from the notes, I can see that I think the incision was made at. I think we were in. I can look it up. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time remembering. We were in the operating room at 8:43. The incision was made at 8:52, and he came out at 8:54.
Okay.
So it was fast.
Yeah. So he's here. We know he's here because Isaac's watching him in the other room. But is he okay?
Yes. So, well, Isaac still left, but the baby comes out. He comes out screaming, and then instantly the energy in the room changed. They said that's exactly what they wanted to hear. They said he was dramatic. Then Isaac comes in. He was like, my insides were everywhere. They didn't. I don't think he was warned of that. He had to walk past that to where the baby was. He said that he had no idea what to do. He did not. He knew the baby. He could see the baby was safe. He did not know if I was safe. He said he didn't know what to do. He felt like he was expected to be the proud papa. So he was, he took some pictures. The baby had blue hands and blue feet, but his APGAR scores were actually very good.
Okay.
And
the blue hands and the blue feet are totally normal. Like for the hands to be completely blue and completely purple in a baby that's born vaginally with no complications at all, it's because when they're learning to like suck, swallow, breathe for the first minute, the body is so smart. It prioritizes brain, heart, lungs. So all of that blood flow is going to the central part. There is a term for it, and I'm sorry, you guys, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what the name of it is. You labor and delivery nurses, just send me a message. But I do know that purple hands and feet are normal for like the first 24 hours or so. Just look at the chest, the lips, the core. And if that's pink, everything's good.
Okay. And amazingly, luckily, thanks to that midwife, I mean, she held him up from whenever he was diagnosed to 8:54 in the morning when he was taken out. And I can't imagine how strenuous, what an awkward position for her hand and body to be in. And she never stopped.
Because she's someone who saves lives.
Yeah.
And that's what she did.
Yeah. I mean, without hesitation at all. So he's screaming. Isaac took a few pictures. They weighed him in, I believe, at it was 8 pounds, 2 ounces, 20 inches, and screaming. And they finally brought him to me, and he stopped screaming completely. It was
Because
It was
he was like,
crazy.
Mama, I'm home.
Yeah. And our cheeks touched, and I think, I vaguely remember saying my baby, and I just was so relieved that he was okay. Um, so relieved. And then they handed him to Isaac, and he seemed to be calmer with Isaac as well, seemed to know him, and I guess they were stitching me back up. And then I started to get scared because I couldn't use my hands or my arms at all.
Because they were
And
strapped down.
what
They
was
were
that?
strapped down.
No, they didn't strap me down, but
Okay.
I couldn't move them. I guess the epidural traveled, or
Went a little high.
and then I started to not be able to talk or feel like I could swallow.
Uh-huh.
So that was scary. The lovely, like, angel anesthesiologist who helped me as soon as I got into the OR was gone, and then it was the person, like, he just disappeared. I don't even know if I imagined him, but then the person who placed the epidural was back, and he was really dismissive about it, and he was like, "You're fine. You're gonna be fine." But I was, I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to use my hands again. Just not, I just didn't know. So that was scary. Eventually, they are wheeling us out of there to go back to the labor room, and they were trying to get me to hold him, and I couldn't. I could not hold him.
Because you weren't too numb. An epidural works with gravity. So they should have been sitting you straight up at some point so that the epidural could fall out of your lungs, out of your throat, out of your arms. Did they ever get you
Yeah,
sitting up so you could?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
Okay.
We got back to the labor room, and I remember being all alone in there. I don't know where Isaac was. Um, a nurse was in there, and but, like, I'm so grateful to her because she put the baby on my chest, and I think I was still pretty reclined. She helped him latch, and she took my phone and took a picture. Um,
Oh,
and she said, "You're gonna want this." Um, and that was, I think it was like 10:13, so a little over an hour after he was born, um, was his first latch. um, yeah, I'm so grateful for that.
yeah.
Sorry. Um,
Don't you dare apologize. Y'all. If you could see a picture of Sarah and I am like red face, pouring tears out of my body. Like, I knew this episode was going to be like super emotional, and I just have so much empathy
Thank
for
you.
your story, and I'm so grateful to you because this is just how the world works. Like, tomorrow, my client's going to have a cord prolapse, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to know how to take care of her because you just taught me
Mm,
what to do.
Thank you. I mean, I really wanted to share it with you because I knew you were going to be empathetic, and I want, it happens. And after his birth, once things settled, I started searching for information, and there just wasn't a lot. Um, I knew I wasn't alone, and I found a few things, but um, I just, want to, if it happens to somebody else, they feel like they're not alone.
Yeah, and I mean, I just had to like Google it with you. Like, the
Yeah.
different types of ones. Like, that's how little information there is. I've been doing this 20 years, and you're the first person to educate me really on cord prolapse. Um and I what we didn't get into is all this scary stuff, and I don't want to get into that either.
Hmm.
So, um I'll put some stuff in the show notes of the different types and people can do their research. But what I do know, Sarah, is that um, the vertex cephalic head down presentation prolapse is that's like the rarest kind. It's usually, from my research, seen more with a transverse lie when the baby's sideways. And so the cervical is wide open for, nothing's blocking it,
Mm-hmm.
or footling breech. So what I learned today, that is awakening me to some of the necessities of some medical interventions is, you know, maybe seeing more positives in vaginal exams or fetal monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
If your birth preferences had said no fetal monitoring, or your
Mm-hmm.
birth preferences had said no vaginal exams, which we talked about with your history, those are two tools that were used to help make this a story where your baby was on your chest at 10-13 breastfeeding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything else you want the audience to hear about Teddy?
Yes. Well, we initially, I'll try to keep it quick, but initially I felt very grateful, and I felt like, almost elated. Like I had the best birth team. What an amazing, it was a hard experience, but everything happened as it should. And I was kind of like on a high. And then the midwife knew, and she said, we need to consider medication. I had a history of anxiety and depression. She said, you've experienced birth trauma. This is going to put you at high risk for postpartum depression. Let's be proactive with this. So she knew, and we did. I pretty shortly thereafter went on 10 milligrams of Celexa, and that was needed. She did do a debrief with me of the birth because I was having a hard time understanding it. And then I think the full weight of everything did sit. It kind of hit me after I'd started, walking around, and I could not walk past the OR. I could not do it. I collapsed, and realized that, yeah, I hadn't processed everything. I haven't, I still haven't processed everything a year out.
Listen,
So
grief takes time. You don't rush grief.
yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, ultimately we're very lucky, but um, it's been hard. I've definitely experienced some postpartum, and um,
Were you able to breastfeed?
yes, and he's a champ. He's still breastfeeding, so that's
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
um,
Sometimes we just need to focus on what wasn't taken away from us.
yeah,
Okay. And that
yeah,
helps us too. The research shows that the more you tell your story, the more that you talk, the more that you process. Like there's all different things. You can do EMDR, you can do it IFC. There's all different types, but the common theme is continuing to tell your story to get it out of your body. Okay.
yeah.
Do you know the book The Body Keeps the Score?
Yes, I have not read it, but
So
I
read it.
should.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that the takeaway for you and for our audience is, I would like everyone to know about the book The Body Keeps the Score. I would like everyone to know about Michelle Smith with Birth Ease Services. I think it's birtheaseservices.com. She's out of Orlando, Florida. She's been on the podcast. She really specializes in processing birth trauma as a hypnotherapist.
Okay.
Healing is possible, and that growth is possible, expansion is possible, having another baby is possible. If that's what you or someone else wants, but we don't ever apologize for our feelings. We don't hide them and tuck them away. Celexa is an antidepressant that is safe for breastfeeding and can really help be a band-aid
Hmm.
while we recover. And I do believe, Sarah, that there's an opportunity for you to keep healing. And the fact that you reached out and you wanted to tell your story on the podcast, like, step one, maybe,
Yeah.
and just keep going. Hold and hold Teddy and have your tools. And um, I don't know if I have anything else to say other than I'm really grateful for you. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much for letting me share. And then I definitely think this has been helpful, and I hope it helps. Not scare. I don't want to scare anybody, but I hope it somehow helps somebody else. We're so grateful to the midwife. It took us 3 days to name him, but his middle name is her last name. So she's. I mean, we're so grateful. So
amazing. And now I lose my bananas again. So, Sarah, thank you for being on the
Thank
Birth
you.
Story podcast.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you for listening to Birth Story. My goal is you will walk away from each episode with a clear picture of how labor and delivery might go, and that you will feel empowered by the end of your pregnancy to speak up, plan and prepare for the birth you want, no matter what that looks like.